Joining us now to explain what a Sanders presidency would mean for the markets and the economy, Stephanie Kelton, senior economic advisor for Bernie Sanders during his presidential campaign. She's also a professor at Stony Brook University. SUNY? Stony Brook?
Stony Brook University, part of the SUNY system.
SUNY, okay, yeah, state, okay. And Joel Griffith, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. It's a catchy phrase, corporate socialism. I hate to use actual words and definitions because, then it ruins the whole idea that Senator Sanders is trying. But socialism, there's capitalism and socialism. Socialism is where the means of production in an economy are owned or controlled by the government. And capitalism is where the means of production are owned in the private sector. So I don't even know what corporate socialism means. Can we just say that Bernie would like to raise taxes on the rich and expand government with more entitlements? That's what he means by democratic socialism, is it not?
Well, what he means by democratic socialism, as he described it yesterday, is sort of a return to, I think, the core values of the Democratic Party. So he's hearkening back to the era of FDR and of the New Deal. And when he talks about corporate socialism, he's talking about the giveaways, the subsidies, the transfer of wealth from people at the very bottom to the people at the very top.
But that doesn't answer my question. Should we continue to have the means of production owned by the government or by the private sector, or should it be switched over to the government? And he did cut his teeth in the Soviet Union. He went over there. He was very positive on their system of government. That collapsed, and we know what happens when there's shortages and it's not market forces that control things. I mean, Adam Smith wrote this in 1776. I'm going to get now that I'm mansplaining. I hate when I get that. But, I mean, it has been around a long time, the idea of the invisible hand. And we do see certain socialist countries not really work very well, like Venezuela. And you see the shortages. People have lost an average of 34 pounds. How is this different? You're going to do it right this time?
Look, he is not talking about socialism. He's not talking about Venezuela-type socialism. He's not talking about the Soviet Union. He's talking about making the system that we have work for everyone and not just a handful of people at the very top.
You think that increasing government and the role in the private sector, more government control, would help the people that are on the lower end of things?
He's not talking about more government control. He's talking about greater freedom. If you listen to the speech yesterday, he emphasized again and again what it means to be free and the various ways in which people today, under the system that we have, aren't free. Are you truly free?
Well, typically socialism leads to tyranny, because if everyone's paid the same thing, then, if a doctor is paid the same as a sewer cleaner, the sewer cleaners are going to leave and go to a different. That's why there are usually walls in socialist countries where people can't get out. Whereas we have a wall because people want to get here. Let me just ask, Joel, what's democratic socialism other than a way of sort of stepping back from what we're really talking about, so you don't, have to answer to comparisons to socialist countries? What is it?
Well, let's take Senator Sanders for his word. I listened to the speech yesterday. I about doubled over when I heard him say there is no freedom without economic freedom. I agree with him. But I feel that he's stolen his definition from Orwell's 1984, where the party leader said slavery is freedom. If you go through his economic agenda, he talks about control of the labor market, energy market, healthcare. Let's just, for 1 second, just look at the energy component, the Green New Deal that the left is promoting. Germany has only implemented a portion of that Green New Deal with their new renewable energy mandates. The electricity costs now in Germany are triple that of the United States. California has embarked on their own version of this. And you see gasoline prices in California, $4 compared to $2.50 down south. That's an extra $1,000 a year per person just with that tiny component of what the Green New Deal would be. We know that socialism results in slower economic growth, fewer economic opportunities, and higher unemployment. And I'm not just referencing Venezuela. I'm talking about countries across Europe, such as Spain and Italy, that have dabbled in this, and they're still paying the economic consequences.
I don't, and it's called Democrat. Anyway, we had Druckenmiller was on the other day, and he had, I don't know how many years, he did 30% every year. He may not be a social a commentator, but he at least knows about markets, I think, to some extent, because he had 30% plus, never had a down year. Here's what he said if Bernie Sanders were elected president, would happen.
Bernie Sanders became president, I think stock prices should be 30 to 40% lower than they are now. The good news is we'd all be much more equal because everybody would be poorer, but the rich would have lost a lot more wealth than the poor would have.
And he makes another point, Stephanie, that you can address. Bernie talks a good game about solving inequality and about equal opportunity. This is what Druckenmiller said, that if he really did want equality, he wouldn't be like this. Check this out.
When he says he's against charter schools, I know the man just doesn't care about inequality. All he cares about power. And for Sanders, I assume he's in the pocket of the teachers' unions. I don't know why he said it. But how in the world can you be against charter schools if you're serious about the inequality issue?
Do you advise him on that issue as well, Stephanie? Or not?
I don't advise on education policy, no.
Well, but to fix the inequality in this country and to hopefully give opportunity to everyone, how do you, if you tax everyone who's, let's say you do 50% wealth tax on all these billionaires or millionaires even, what do you do with the money to make it? Do you just give it universal basic income, or do you try to equalize opportunity, or just redistribute?
Well, first of all, no one's talking about anything remotely like 50%.
But what do you do if you do tax higher taxes on people that have wealth? What do you do with the money that you collect?
The point is, he's talking about a range of programs. He's talking about making public colleges and universities tuition-free. So he's got a deep commitment to the importance of education. He's talking about investing in infrastructure. He's talking about making health care a right of all people. He's talking about child care. He's talking about a right to a job. He's talking about affordable housing. He's talking about a range of things that lift people up from the bottom, raising the minimum wage, dealing with pay inequities. I can go on, but there are, literally dozens.
I'm trying to figure out what the bill would.
How do you diminish inequality?
The individual bills for each one of those things you just said, with the entitlements we have right now, we've got to somehow address the way that they're exploiting it. 70% of the federal budget is already with what we have. Joel, can we afford that type of expansion and for lack of a better term, more entitlements, more free stuff? Is there enough money to go around? We need that new monetary theory or something where you just print, I guess.
Well, let's just look at the costs of the Medicare for All proposal. We're looking at $33 trillion over 10 years. That's $250,000 per family. And the question arises, well, can the wealthy pay for this bill? But if you were to implement the 2% wealth tax that Senator Warren just proposed, if you were to implement a 70% top income tax, if you were to implement the financial transactions tax, that would raise only $300 billion of the $3 trillion annual bill. So where does that money come from? Well, I would like to refer people to the bill that Senator Sanders submitted, Medicare for All, in 2017, and in the fine print, there's some suggestions, and one of the suggestions is an 11.5% payroll tax that would apply to almost every single worker, and that still would only cover half of the bill. We need to see Senator Sanders and others on the left be honest that if we're going to have a European-style welfare state, we're going to have a European-style tax code, and that means the middle class is going to pay that burden.
It's a lot of money. I think about the new Green Deal, Stephanie. Just that. I see the numbers that are thrown around, and he wants to do that too, right?
Look, when we talk about Medicare for All, it's important to remember that, one, we pay more already than any other country on earth. We're talking about 18% of our economy wrapped up in health care. So transitioning from the system we have, which is bloated, inefficient, and the most expensive in the world, to a more efficient, more cheaper form of healthcare delivery, we're actually going to save trillions of dollars. So the question isn't how do we come up with the money to pay for it? We're already paying more than anyone else in the world. The question is really, what are we going to do with all of the money we save under a more efficient, less costly healthcare system? We're talking about saving trillions of dollars. Some of those freed up resources can go into something like the Green New Deal.
You look at, God bless our veterans, but you look at government-run systems, and that's not the first thing that most people would think of, is that it becomes more efficient and that you save trillions of dollars.
Medicare for All, veterans health care, the most popular of the health care systems that we have in place today.
So with Joel, we got to run, but we're going to pay for the new Green Deal with what we save on health care when the government runs health care.
Well, we might want to look at the more than 200,000 veterans that one recent report shows died waiting for proper health care with the VA. If this is a model for our health care system, Well, we're in for scary times ahead.